Good evening, my friends. I'm gonna not be so busy and pretty soon, but right now, man. Anyways, we're not gonna keep talking about that. Let's focus on the word. Hebrews chapter 4. I just wanted to talk about the Sabbath a little bit more. I'm still trying to understand this as well, but I know what I've been convinced of, but then it's like to explain what I've been convinced of. I don't understand how sometimes when you receive something by revelation, it's like you download it into your spirit, and sometimes it's difficult to even explain how it is that you've come to this conclusion. So I'm going to try to do that. Hebrews chapter 4, let's start reading in just the first 5 verses. Let us therefore fear, let us fear, lest a promise being left to us of entering into his rest, any of you should come short of it. For unto us the gospel was preached, as well as unto them. But the word preached did not profit them, not being mixed with faith in those that heard. Interesting that he's saying here that the gospel was preached to Israel. But I'm not going to go into that right now. That's a whole other subject in itself. For we which have believed do enter into his rest, as he said, as I have sworn in my wrath, if they shall enter into my rest, although the works were finished from the foundation of the world. For he spoke in a certain place on the seventh day on this wise, and God did rest the seventh day from all his works. And in this place again, if they shall enter into my rest. Seeing therefore it remains that some must enter this, and those which it was first preached unto did not enter because of unbelief. Basically, I'm sorry that I'm reading the King James. But basically what he's saying, we are entering into God's rest. Now I know this is, I think this is dual, right? Before I was talking about how we can enter into God's rest now and cease from our work, but we're still like, there's still the struggle. There's still a striving. There's still our inward spirit is groaning to be like freed from this body. So even though we can rest in the Lord here and cease from our own work and do the works of God, we still aren't like completely like enjoying our rest, right? There's still a struggle. So there is a future rest as well. So it's like we can rest now, rest in the Lord, wait patiently for him, submit to him, surrender to him. But we also are looking forward to a time where we have rested and like we don't have to worry about nothing. We did what we had to do, we made it, and we're with the Lord. And that's like when we're like really resting. So, Paul, I believe this is Paul, wrote Hebrews, is saying that there's a promise of entering into his rest. Let's not fall short of it, because the gospel was preached unto us as well as unto them. So he's using the example of Israel, because he's using the example that I swore unto them in my wrath, they shall not enter into the promised land because of their unbelief. So basically what he's trying to say is the Israelites that came out of Egypt, they were not able to enter into the promised land because whenever the 12 spies came, they didn't believe that God was going to bring them in there. They believed the bad report, and their heart was discouraged, and they didn't believe God was able to bring them in, and it brought them out there for no reason, and they turned back to Egypt in their heart, and they hardened their hearts. So God is saying, like, look, I want you to enter into my rest. They shall enter into my rest, Um, but that's what this person Paul is explaining. He's saying, if they will enter into my rest. And he's putting forth the proposal that in verse 4 he says, for he spoke in a certain place on the seventh day of this wise, and God did rest the seventh day from all his works. That's why he says right here in verse 3, he says the works were finished from the foundation of the world. So when God finished the work on the sixth day, he's saying that the works were finished and God rested. And he's bringing everybody into this rest that God himself has rested from his work. And he's inviting us to enter into this rest on the seventh day. But the author here, Paul, to me, of Hebrews, is correlating the Sabbath rest with the promised land. Okay, he's correlating the Sabbath rest of that God rested on the seventh day from all his works. He's correlating that with entering into the promised land. He's saying that if we enter into God's rest, this is the same as the Sabbath rest. Okay, the seventh day, keeping it holy. So I just wanted to point that out, and hopefully I didn't make that confusing. But try to follow these first 6 verses of Hebrews and understand. Maybe don't use King James, but understand that he's saying that he's showing us Israel. He's showing us that God rested from his works, and he's saying that Israel shall enter into my rest, but he's also saying that they didn't enter into his rest because of unbelief, and there still remains a rest for us to enter into, and let us not fall short of it. And he's saying that if we don't fall short of the promise of the rest, that we are entering into the Sabbath rest of God, where we are all ceasing from our works and just enjoying being with God forever. Amen.